Hello, my name is Philip Puglisi, and this is Dominick Yamarino. And today we'll be discussing the importance of women's rights in today's society. For all of history, women have been seen as the weaker gender by most males. In many cases, such as work or even sports, they have been treated unfairly and still continue to be treated unfairly even today. A lot of men look down on women and believe they can't perform a task to the same quality as a man could simply because they're a woman. Because of this, women are sometimes paid less and don't get the more important jobs, again, because of their gender. The same story applies to the sport industry, where women are paid less and aren't treated as equals to men. One example is how women in sports have many rule changes compared to male sports because they're seen as weaker and less capable of doing what a man can apparently do. And it's even worse in other countries, and it's something that shouldn't actually be a thing. Women have done just as much as men to help develop this country, and in a sense, without them, we wouldn't even be here today. First of all, I'll be covering women's rights in the workplace. This is just a slide I found about the years since complaining traineeship that women are paid less throughout as it continues to go. And as you can see, there's more of a gap as the years continue to progress, even though they would be getting the same experience as a male would be getting, but they're still getting paid less for doing the same kind of jobs. According to ACLU.org, this blog was written by the American Civil Liberties Union, and it's a blog regarding women's rights in the workplace. Although pregnancy discrimination has long been illegal, workers who are pregnant are often fired or pushed out of the workplace, which means that they don't get a leave of absence, and they're usually pushed out for someone else to take their job, or even a man to come in and take their job, since a man wouldn't have to deal with that problem. This kind of discrimination is rooted to the idea that women should be mothers instead of workers, which is an extremely sexist idea and a terrible way to look at an employee, because at the end of the day, all employees are the same and they're all there to make an honest living. Women come to work every day to provide for their family just as much as a man does, and should have the same rights when it comes to a leave of absence. For example, I would like to imagine that when that boss's mother was pregnant with him, that if she had to get a leave of absence to go home, and be in comfort to deal with having a baby, that she would be able to come back and have the same job to be able to support that child. But instead, a lot of men, apparently these bosses, forget that they came from a woman and like to fire them. And secondly, according to the blog womenemployee.org, which is a website also based on women's rights, discrimination at work is still a fact of life for too many women. Women earn just 80% of a man's wages on average. Women still face discrimination in pay and promotion barriers and advancement because of family responsibilities. Because women are seen as less competent compared to men, some employers don't believe that they should be given the same pay. Instead, many women will see less pay for doing the same job as a man, even if they are in fact doing it better. The male boss will just, for some reason, still decide that they should not be paid the same, or if not more, because the woman could be doing the job better and deserve more pay. Women will see less pay from even higher jobs because of the pay they should initially be getting will be lowered over a lifetime and will be cheated out of Social Security, pensions, and other forms of savings. This doesn't only affect a woman's pay, but it will reflect on her spending and power at home, which kind of causes more of a separation between men and women, because they'll have less money to spend at home, and then if, for example, maybe the husband will start thinking that he has more power over his wife because he's making more money, when in reality the woman should be getting more of a paycheck. Because of this gap, inequality between men and women, because of this gap, the inequality gap between men and women will continue to rise until something can be done about it. Obviously, it's not a problem that will be fixed overnight, but it's a problem that affects too many women and should be taken very seriously. And finally, a lot of women also experience sexual harassment in jobs that might be lower pay and believe that they just have to deal with it out of fear of losing their job. They don't want to speak up because they don't want to speak up against it because it might not follow through in a case of law, and then would result in them being unemployed, and instead seeing the idea of dealing with the harassment as just an easier way to live because it's either that or not have a job at all, which is a really unfair way to live life. That's no way for a woman who is simply trying to support herself or her family to live. If sexual harassment is happening in a workplace, whoever is doing it should be fired, and the person shouldn't have to be living in fear about losing their job for speaking up against it. A lot of these complaints come from women who work in isolated areas, such as janitors and hotel workers, who can't really do anything about it. They kind of just get forced into that situation, and then they don't really have a way out of it. Another example is women who work in construction. Close to 6 in 10 women working in construction have reported being touched or asked for sex by co-workers who are male. Sexual harassment is one of the major issues because it can be one of the most unnoticeable things. Just like simply like a boss coming up and like rubbing one of his employees' shoulders or something, which obviously the woman probably doesn't want. Or like unwanted sexual comments that maybe the guy thinks is funny, or even a girl might think is funny to a guy, and you know, it's just, there isn't really a reason for it to be happening, and it shouldn't be happening at all. And then in reality, they have huge effects on women mentally and sometimes physically, and can make women uncomfortable to even go to work, which is not a right way to live life. Overall, women are treated unfairly in today's workplace. Whether it be paid for equal jobs, the ability to have a leave of absence due to pregnancy, or sexual harassment, women face too many complications in the workplace when they should have equal treatment, because they're there for the same reason a man is, just make an honest living, and to support her family. No one should have to go through these things based on their gender, race, or anything. America was built on hard work, and anyone who is willing to work hard should be able to be treated as an equal. And now, Dom will be talking about women's rights in sports.
Alright, so I'll be covering the women's rights in sports. Women have faced a lot of adversity when it comes to the sporting world, and many of these complications resemble one they can face in the workplace as well. The first point I will be discussing is how they don't deserve equal pay in sports. According to the BillieJeanKing.com, which is a website based on the history of Billie Jean King, which was she was a female tennis player, the Billie Jean King Enterprise says that in 1971, Billie Jean became the first woman athlete to earn over $100,000 in prize money. Yet when she won the US Open a year later, she has received $15,000 less than the men's championship in the same year, which isn't fair to those base money prizes off of gender. The two played in the same tournament, but because she was a woman, she received less pay. $15,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money, but now in 1971 it was, and when she was cheated out of it, it's simply because she was a woman. The two play the same sport and bring the same type of entertainment and receive the same amount of pay. And some argued in this website that she was actually better than the men who won the tournament but still received less pay. My second point on this will be about media coverage. The website athleticassignments.com, a blog posted by Lehan Polkovich, which is about media coverage regarding women's sports, stated, in America, 40% of sports people are women. However, only 6 to 8 of the total sports media coverage is devoted to them. And women's only sports stories add up to about 3.5% of all sports in the 4 major U.S. newspapers today. Some people might claim that women's sports aren't interesting enough to deserve more coverage, but at the same time, how we would even know this, But at the same time, how would we even know this if only 3.5% of the stories covered are about women's sports? They simply aren't given the chance to get out to the people, and I'm sure a lot of people would be interested in it if they were given the chance to see what they were all about. Because there is less coverage of women's sports on television, that they generally receive less money and revenue. This is a main reason why women tend to receive less money as a professional athlete, because they don't get as much airtime as they should, which causes their teams and sponsors to get less money also. For my last point, I will talk about how college sports for women were prior to Title IX, which is, it's just a picture of Title IX right there. Before Title IX, college athletes for women were almost non-existent due to no one really believed that women's sports were relevant, and schools weren't willing to fund them because they were putting all their money towards the male athletes and their scholarships. However, the Title IX changed that because it's a law that basically states that all schools who receive federal fund will have equal opportunity when it comes to school athletic programs. Before this law, women were allowed to participate in intramural, club, and sorority matches, which I don't really know what a sorority match is, but, and they said something about a play day, which is like where sororities get together and have little competitions between themselves. With the backing of the Title IX, the NCAA argued for women being allowed to play NCAA sports, and that the schools were using this excuse since they were not federal funded schools, that they did not have any money to start up a program for the women, but yet they had the money to offer out scholarships for men and get them equipment deals, sponsors, and like all this advertisement throughout like the states. Because of this, schools were made to start a program to offer women the chance to play NCAA sports at the collegiate level and be offered the same opportunity as men's. One of America's biggest claims is that all people are created equal. Yet even in today's society, we see that that isn't true. Which one of the biggest concerns being equal rights, women seem to generally get the short end of the stick. Day in and day out, women work just as hard, if not harder in some situations. As men deserve the equal treatment when it comes to this, we see it every day in our workplace when it comes to fair play and sexual harassment. And we see it in our sporting industries where women still receive less pay and less opportunity to show their talents. Without women, none of us would be here today, and I think it's time people start recognizing that and start seeing them as equals no matter what the situation is, even if it's outside of the workplace and sports. Women are just as important as men in the society and bring just as much value, and I'd like to end this speech with a little quote by Justin Gardner. A state that does not educate and train women is like a man who only trains his right arm. That's all.
And for questions, like, we were just curious, like, if any of you have ever seen, like, any, like, women not getting the right treatment. Like, for example, like, we didn't have a women's ACHA D2 hockey team until I think, like, 2 years ago. And even though there were plenty of girls that wanted to play hockey here, our president just simply didn't think that they should fund it. And it was until people started making a push for it that they realized that they had to do it because of the Title IX example. Like, they have to, under the law, it says that if there's enough people that want to try a sport out, that they have to try it. For example, our rowing team was developed last year because there was enough people that wanted to do it, so they pushed for it, and they got the funding for it. And, you know, I just don't know if any of you guys are, like, seeing any examples of just women not getting treated fairly. I'm guessing probably you three would be the three to talk to about that. Guys. And if not, that's fine, but like that just...
I wish our hockey people...
Yeah, because I figured they had a lot of points to say around it.
I don't know, just like, not from like personal experience, but I know in like everyday like business jobs, like women get paid less, even though they do more, like, or they just assign them as like secretaries and stuff because they don't think that they could actually run a business.
Right, even though they have the right credentials to be a higher position, that they apply for a job that maybe a man applies for, and if a guy is doing the decision, he's probably gonna give it to the guy. And you know, he might not even be sexist like at heart, but like it just might be one of those just natural things where he sees a guy and he's like, oh, I could be boys with this guy or something. Like even something as little as that is still like a woman not getting the rights that she deserves.
And then it would be for women, obviously. Like, I'm assuming you guys play sports here as well.
No.
Now, do you guys see?
I'm interested in graduation.
Okay. Now, so since you play sports, do you see a difference between your program, your women's program, to your men's program, like between gear-wise, funding, like?
I mean, I'm on the track team, so we're all.
Oh, you all get the same thing.
Yeah, we're all together, so.
Cool. That is
Sorry,
cool.
can't help it. But I know, like, in the past, like, at high school, I know, like, a lot of our, like, guys basketball, guys football, like, that's the main, like,
Yeah.
sports, you know? Like, they got more funding, more jerseys,
Better like transportation on
Yeah.
road trips. Yeah.
stuff like that.
I can tell you from work experience that I know of many, many instances of discrimination and harassment, definitely.
Oh, yeah, I've been harassed at work, sexually harassed by, like, customers, all the
Probably
time.
like old guys making comments at you
Like,
and
guys
stuff.
are like my dad's age.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, do you track? Like, yeah. I'm like, oh, I can tell by your legs. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
see,
like,
it's like little
that's
things
not
like
okay.
that.
I get that all the time at work.
Wow.
All the time.
It's not
I've
right.
gotten some like really.
Where do you
like,
work? Just like out of curiosity, like.
Beach bar. It's in Clark Lake.
Okay.
It's
So-
not right.
Some of my girls have got like way. We have like some people that have stalked before. I found we have like band nights at my work. I've had someone like message me on Instagram, not Instagram, on Facebook, ask me if I was single, and said that he found me at work when I was working. I don't know how he found my name, but found my name, found me on
Yeah.
Facebook. I was
See,
doing.
I know about that. My sister worked at Twin Peaks for a couple of years, and I don't know if you guys know what Twin Peaks is, but like obviously,
It's like a
Twin-
Hooters.
yeah, kind of like a Hooters, and like she says that even her personally, like she's been like grabbed by guys, she knows,
Oh yeah.
but she's like a manager now, so she doesn't have to like go out onto the floor and everything, but like even like her employees, like she knows like it's almost on a daily basis where like guys will go in there and they think just because that they're their waitress that they can treat them however they want. And I can almost guarantee you, like if I walked out there with some booty shorts on, like no one's gonna make comments to me, you know, or nothing like that. No one's gonna be grabbing at my butt. But just because they're women and that they think that they won't do anything about it, that they still do it. And it's a problem in a lot of workplaces, and it's just something that, you know, shouldn't be a thing. But, you know, there's things trying to stop it. But like I said, it's not something that's gonna be fixed overnight, but it's something that, like, hopefully, like a speech like this, like if more people were to see it, like it ring a bell for them or something, maybe change something. So that's why we decided to do it on this. And that's all we got.